Secondary School, winning the single A provincial championships. I was the vice principal there many moons ago, coaching senior girls basketball. Hi girls. The best part of these guys winning the provincials is not that it's a wicked school and awesome staff. It's the fact that they went in ranked 10th. They went in ranked 10th in every single game they played. They were the underdogs and they came through and they win the provincial championships. That is impressive, so congrats Sparks. Which brings me to Saturday's walk and talk. Today I'm with Mr. Cole Levitt over here. He has an organization or a program called Mental Toughness for
Mental Fitness
for young athletes. Today I want to talk to Cole about those ultra competitive kids. I want to talk to Cole about these kids like the kids on the Similkameen Sparks who've got a certain drive and a certain level of competitiveness to succeed, to push themselves, to do what most athletes aren't able to do because it takes a certain level of intensity and grit and perseverance to get to that point. So Cole, my question to you is, because these walk and talks are designed for parents and us helping parents with their kids, what can we do to instill that drive in our kids who are more competitive than the rest?
Yeah, so when it comes to really building that intrinsic drive, that motivation that kids, who take it to the next level seem to have over kids who maybe play a bit more socially, or they play the sport for fun. They want to be out there just to be with their friends. There's that inner passion, I think, that the drive comes from for these really high level athletes. When I work with teams, when I work with young athletes, I really kind of try to give them this idea of building a comfort in their discomfort. If you can get comfortable being uncomfortable, you're going to take your game to that next level. And the athletes that really thrive at that higher level tend to be the ones that are comfortable in that sense of discomfort.
Can I just interrupt you for a second now? So, like you mentioned discomfort and kids being uncomfortable and being able to work through that. So I'm a parent and I've got a kid who has that drive and they have that passion. What are some things that I can do at home to help co-regulate my kid so they learn to get better and better with that discomfort? What are some of the things that I could do as a parent?
Every athlete who performs at a high level has a certain amount of stress. It's eustress, it's the good stress, the stress that helps us to perform. So allowing your young athlete to develop that comfort with their nerves, with their potential stress, or even if they want to call it pre-game performance anxiety, we want that to be so comfortable that when they have a game, a big competition coming up, they talk about, well, like, how ready are you versus how anxious are you? And being able to scale it, Leroy, like if you talk about scaling your stress or your emotions on this 1 to 10, 9 or 10 being kind of a fight or flight kind of panic that's not good for anyone, or 1 or 2 being that boredom that's not helpful either. We want kids to be on that level of stress kind of in around that 5, 6, 7 area. And if you can kind of put a name to it too, and you can scale it, you can become much more comfortable with where you're at when it comes to your levels of stress and emotion.
So if I'm at home, just say I'm going to use basketball just because my kid played basketball. So if I'm at home and let's just say he's shooting in the backyard, how can I physically get involved with him in the sense of not just talking, but what can I do to make when he's practicing more challenging? Or if I'm a coach, or if I'm a parent coach or whatnot, like how can we physically create that feeling how can we elicit those feelings in our competitive kid so they can actually experience that discomfort and work through it?
Yeah, you have to set up the environment for the discomfort. So, I mean, if it's 1v1 and he's dominating you 1v1, it should be
never would happen. Never would happen.
Well, who knows? Then it becomes a 2v1 or one hand behind the back. We can structure these environments to provide discomfort. Play in the rain, play with a flat ball, play with something that makes the challenge and embrace the challenge, celebrate the challenge. Obviously we know our kids grow through discomfort. They improve through discomfort.
So I'm going to jump in again, because you're saying things that are making me think as a parent. So one of the things that we see as educators is kids being mentally tough, but that mental fitness, like your program talks about. Like even in school, we have kids, when the going gets tough, they get out. They don't have the grit anymore like they used to. And a lot of it's because parents are too afraid to push. They're constantly rescuing their kids from uncomfortableness. And so what do you say to parents who are afraid to let their kids feel that pain, or to feel that I guess that suffering, even though those two words sound like they might be horrible, but they're really not. So what do you say to a mom or a dad who, you say to a mom who doesn't like how hard their dad is pushing the kid, and where's that balance? Like, what's okay for parents in terms of pushing their kids with sports and being competitive?
I've been guilty of it myself as a parent, of potentially being a bit of a snowplow at times, getting in, trying to remove some of the things, only because of my own emotional dysregulation, my own kind of worry, right? And we hurt when our kids hurt, and we struggle when our kids struggle. So getting really aware of what my triggers are, understanding what it is that when I see my kids hurt and when they're in a difficult place, I need to check in with myself. Where am I on my regulation scale right now? How am I doing? And then allowing them to kind of communicate to you just how uncomfortable they are. Like I mentioned, like around that 9 or 10 kind of panic place, we don't want our kids there. It's not helpful. But if they're in that place of growth at 5, 6, 7, we want them to have lots of repetitions with that, because like you mentioned, in the school district, kids will go to that place of avoidance. So they won't get the repetitions in that they need to grow from an educational standpoint, from an athletic standpoint. We want them getting those repetitions as much as they can.
So Cole, you bring up some really good points again around this discomfort thing, and I didn't know the conversation was going to go into this as deep as it has. And so one of the things that we deal with as parents, and we see with our kids, is they have this fear. They have this fear of making mistakes, or fear of not being successful. So as a parent who has a highly competitive kid and athletes in our home, I remember with Cruz, when he was sending emails to coaches throughout the United States to go play basketball down south and stuff, and there was always this underlying fear that he wasn't good enough, and it's kind of the same thing I see with kids in school, where they have this fear that they're not going to pass the test, they're not going to be able to get to where they need to go, and even with, like, Evie's playing KVA volleyball, she's on the black team. It's very, very competitive, and she's got a couple friends who are off to play college ball and stuff, and you can see sometimes, particularly last year when we were at nationals with a couple girls, there were scouts watching them, and you could see the fear kind of take over. So what do you suggest for parents in terms of dealing with that aspect of the competitive nature of these kids who are actually going to go play college, not just kids playing for fun, but like they can play college, and maybe one day they're going to play junior hockey, or even the NHL or anything like that? Like, how do you deal with it?
Well, I mean, you're speaking to what I think I term as the triple threat. So the three things that are most likely to steal from an athlete's performance. And number one is a fear of making mistakes. Kids don't want to make mistakes. Number two is a fear of failure. I feel like I'm gonna, have a bad game. I feel like I'm not gonna hit the goals I set for myself. And the third one is probably the most important, and the one you're speaking to, I think, here, which is a fear of letting other people down. And when I sit with athletes, I'll just kind of name it to help tame it, and we'll talk about, okay, yeah, we've done this kind of mental skills assessment. We see that you have this high level of this high fear of letting others down. So I'll ask them to kind of say, okay, we're going to name these three things, and then you tell me which one's at the highest. Is it fear of letting parents down, fear of letting coaches down, or fear of letting teammates down? And through this kind of lens of human acceptance that we need, we always want people's acceptance. We're wired for that. So when kids start to name, well, yeah, number one is my parents. And, well, why your parents? Well, they put so much time and energy and money.
Money.
so that sometimes those discussions are not even had. We just get kids in sports and we just go get them, and then you see this fear, this hesitancy, and then when you can just sort of name it and have that experience in a room with a family, with parents and the kids, it just starts to take all the weight away. That okay, of course you love your parents, they put a ton of time into you, so of course you're scared of letting them down at times. And just being able to name that again starts to kind of tame the big fear that you speak of there.
This is a bit of a loaded question. So I'm a dad, and I coached both my kids in swimming. Then I coached my son basketball all the way through his high school career, which was very painful. My daughter won't let me coach her anymore. Never did after swimming. I'm still upset about that, Evie. So here's my question, I guess, and this is me, kind of having some regrets, wishing that I might have did things differently. What message do you have for the parents who coach their own kids who are ultra competitive? And this is an important question because I have a lot of teams if parents weren't coaching their own kids.
Right,
that kind of nowadays volunteerism is something that's it's vanishing. So it's a fine line when you're a parent and you have to juggle coaching your own ultra competitive kid, also worrying about parents thinking that you're playing your kid more than their kid. I was lucky because my son was one of those kids who would be banging on the gym door at 6 a.m. to have the custodian let him in and stuff. So, it took that away from me because it was obvious. But how do we as parents deal with ultra competitive kids who are our own and we're their coach at the same time, I guess is my question.
That's tricky, isn't it? It's one of those things where you're wearing two hats at the same time, trying to navigate the pieces of a parent while also being a coach. And I'm in that position right now with my son's soccer team. And the car ride home is one of those moments we talk about a lot, about just how important and how powerful they are while their minds are still somewhat dysregulated from a game. And what are those initial messages? Because they don't always remember what you say, but they will remember how they felt when they left the field or the pitch. It's more of a feeling versus what's being said. And parents obviously want to help, and I want to help my son, and so sometimes it feels a lot like correction and direction. But what I've learned over the years is the only thing that he really needs sometimes after that big tough game is more so connection. So we go for the drive, I say the same thing, I try to maintain my regulation. We go for a bite to eat, or we'll get something, and sometimes if it's a really tough game, we'll just make sure that we change the subject or the topic.
I made that mistake too many times after swimming, correcting strokes, and it backfired on me so freaking much. That's one of my biggest regrets, I think. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because we want to, right? We want to help. We're there to help. We feel like we have a sense of how we can be helpful. And sometimes when kids are in that emotional brain and we start going to correction, it just feels like something's wrong, as if it sometimes triggers a feeling of inadequacy. And obviously that's not what we're trying to do, but we're triggering that piece of them that feels like it wasn't good enough out there today, or I'm not good enough as an athlete.
Goes back to what you were saying when we were on that side of the field, when we were talking about getting our own triggers under control. Because one of the things that I struggled with was I was living vicariously through my kids. I mean, I was a pretty good athlete in high school, but I was nowhere near as good as my kids, and I want them to be more successful than they want to be half the time. So that's the other balance, I guess, as a parent. I think that's when I got in the car, started trying to have a look at my kids' strokes, especially my daughter, because she was a provincially ranked swimmer. It's like I wanted her to be better and better, and I couldn't shut up. And it's just like it's the same thing, I think, with parents who are in school and they have kids who are straight A's and they want them to be doctors and lawyers, and they want them to be, nobody wants your kids to be more successful than a parent. And that's, I think, the biggest struggle, So on that note, what would you tell Leroy 15 years ago when he was coaching swim club? Like, what advice would you give him around that aspect of?
The simplest way I could put it is let your athlete lead. So
Let your athlete lead.
Let your athlete lead, which means they're the leader of the discussion after the competition. They're the leader of, how much do I want to take on? How much do I want to train? How many sports do I want to play? How many camps do I want to go to? How much of my free time do I want to dedicate towards sports? And, we, like you said, we want better than we had. We want our kids to have better than what we had. So we want them to go to the Olympics, play in the NHL, all those kind of things. But what I find happens, unfortunately, is when we push a little bit too hard, when we sign them up for too many things, the motivation transfers from the athlete. It's less about intrinsic for themselves and more extrinsic, because I want to make my parents proud.
Right.
And that's where we talk about burnout, where I'm working really hard, but I'm not really working for myself anymore. I'm really working for the people that I care about. And if you're doing that all the time, and your identity might even be connected to performance by that time. Like, who are you? Well, I'm a swimmer, or I'm a high-level basketball player. And as we know, our performances in our life go up and down, up and down, up and down. So if our identity is very much connected to our performance, our sense of self then goes up and down, up and down, up and down. So we want our young athletes to be intrinsically motivated to do the work that they do for themselves. Yes, make mom and dad proud. Yes, make coaches and teammates proud, but to more so make themselves proud.
If there's one piece of advice that you can give to parents about their kids who are ultra competitive, who have the potential to go play college, maybe even the pros, what's one piece of advice you would give to parents, besides all the shitty things that I did, obviously? But what is one thing that you could leave parents with today?
If I can have two, please, Leroy.
Yeah,
give me two.
Today you can.
Number one is know your own triggers. Know your own emotional dysregulation. When we see our kids struggle, when the referee makes a call, when our kid has to sit on the bench a little bit longer, understand what are you going through in that moment. Because if you are bringing that dysregulation, that stress into the car on the ride home, or into the house, I mean, obviously the kid picks up on that. Your child will pick up on that. And then the other piece is allowing your child to experience discomfort, and through a larger, wider lens, that discomfort that they're experiencing right now, as hard as it is for you, is that it's actually growing them as an athlete, as a person, long term. So seeing growth and struggle as a real benefactor to their long-term development. I was just watching a video by Tom Brady. You don't have to have any comments about the Patriots or anything. I know you're a Niners fan, but
bang bang, Niners gang.
Tom talks about the process, and you're not growing unless you're struggling, and you're not improving as an athlete unless you're having that discomfort in practice, in training. So allowing that discomfort to happen, not just in training, but at home at times with academics, that if we can get comfortable with our own child's discomfort, we're actually allowing them to grow and to thrive. And then
wow, that was a lot of information, and a lot of really good information. Some of the key points that Cole brought up revolve around that discomfort. And I think where we've gone as a society in the last 15 or so years, with the introduction of technology and social media, and all of us sort of being distracted with the way the world is that we tend to get into this place where we want to bail our kids out. We try to take away pain. We try to take away any kind of emotional suffering. We try to take away that discomfort. And unfortunately, it leads us to a place where our kids lose the ability to persevere, and it takes away that determination and passion from them. And what I think Cole's trying to say, and what I've been trying to say a lot, is that intrinsic motivation is something that's super important. And as parents, sometimes we need to get out of the way and let them experience that. And I think, that's the purpose of developing emotional intelligence. That's the purpose of having our kids in sports. And that's the purpose of life, is to have kids have those passions so they can grow up to be who they want to be. So, Cole, we're going to tie this up, but where can families reach out to you? Because I know you do a lot of work with a lot of the clubs in town here, and probably a lot of other places. But if parents, I don't know if you work specifically with parents or not, but where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, no, working a lot with individual athletes, teams, organizations, and a few schools. And my website is mentalfitnessforyoungathletes.com. So yeah, you can find me at mentalfitnessforyoungathletes.com, and please reach out and connect. And yeah, thanks for having me, Leroy.
You're welcome. Okay. And on that note, everyone,
Peace
peace
out.
out.